Welcome to Transforming Medical Communications, a podcast by MedComms experts. We share medical communications insights and advice from the best and brightest in the industry to find out what they're doing to push our industry forward. Here's your host, Wesley Portegies.
Welcome to another episode of Transforming Medical Communications. I'm your host, Wesley Portegies, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Hiren Patel. So Hiren is the Senior Director of Global Medical Information at Provan Therapeutics. And with a robust background in the pharmaceutical industry and medical information, Hiren is perfectly positioned to discuss how we can break away from traditional models and innovate in our space. He also has an 8-month-old baby at home, so I think he's particularly excited to have a bit of time away to talk with me today. Welcome, Hiren.
Well, thank you very much, Wesley, for having me here.
So this is a special day today because this is the first TMC recording where we have a medical information person. So I'm looking forward to ask a lot of questions about that today. And I think it's particularly interesting to understand, especially the collaboration between different medical affairs departments and how they work more and more together. But to start off with a probably more easy topic here, could you tell us a little bit more about your career so far? And maybe particularly, what are some of the lessons that you have taken from it that shaped your approach to MedInfo?
Yeah, no, and thank you very much for having me on this. I'm probably an N of one being new here for MedInfo, and probably will kind of branch out into a different direction than most other medical affairs colleagues. But I started up in the industry just right out of school. I'm a pharmacist by training. Started up in large pharma at Janssen Pharmaceuticals, eventually transitioned to medium pharma at Sanovian, and then a smaller company called Therapeutics prior to joining Travere a couple of years ago. And I've been primarily in the medical information space for that period of time. So almost about 18 years now, have been supporting MedInfo from different therapeutic areas and developing my experience and expertise in this area over that time. Some of the things that I've learned over the tenure of my career is, one, always ask questions. I feel like we're never experts. We're always learning. We're always developing. Somebody could always think of something that you may not be thinking about, but asking questions never hurts. Sometimes people feel hesitant to ask, but it's never a detriment to do so. The second thing is it's pharmaceutical industry. Things shift, priorities change on a regular basis. Being nimble is probably one of the most important aspects of working in industry or in MedInfo. Is products come and go, legacy products end up coming out, and then new products come in. So you have to be able to shift your mindset, your therapeutic area knowledge, and be able to adjust as necessary. And then the last thing I've learned, and it's something I do more often now, is don't be afraid to take risks. I feel like taking risks in industry are critical for you to be able to develop, to move forward, to ensure that you are progressing. And I say take risks, but I think I want to caveat that strategic risks. You want to make sure that you just don't take unnecessary risks, but you take risks that are strategic, are thought through. Some may work out, some may not, but at least you made the effort and tried. So those are some of the big things that I've taken away throughout my career working in industry.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I really like that. Specifically the risk one. And because I think in order to innovate, you need to experiment, right? And when you experiment, just like in academia, you don't know what the outcome is going to be in the beginning. So how would you say MedInfo has evolved as a function over the last decade or so? And where do you maybe see where strides were made and improvements were made, but maybe also what are some areas where you feel there's more opportunity to evolve further?
So I think medical information has made tremendous strides over the last decade, maybe even 2 decades. And I think the advent of technology and the becoming more forefront and becoming more prominent has really impacted how medical information should be shared, disseminated, created, developed, as well as made available for HCPs. Now, I say that we've shifted in that direction. I just think that we are still a ways away from it. I feel that medical information has been a function where the foundation is developing content to share and address inquiries for HCPs so they can make patient care decisions. A lot of what needs to change hasn't all been changed. I feel that technology has moved so much faster than we've been able to keep up with that we and MedInfo are still trying to get there. So there's been some strides towards developing websites, making content a little bit more digestible and concise. working towards what's called chunking content, and you put little snippets together and reusable content, and going to make it more digital, make it more available. But I think the core foundation is what are known as standard response documents and frequently asked questions or verbal scripts that really defines what we share. Now, that's not always transitioned and moved with MedInfo, but I think that's something that we need to continue to strive towards and making adjustments in.
Mm-hmm. So according to your view, like why would you say some of these things are maybe a little bit behind? What are the hurdles?
Because medical creation has been around for so many years, a lot of folks have become very comfortable in the space, and it's almost as if they're resistant to change. And change does require a lot of change management. It requires a lot of oversight, and it requires a lot of buy-in. And I feel that folks are under the impression that, well, what we've been doing has been working. It's been supporting the HCPs. It's getting them the information they're looking for. We haven't really heard individuals complain about it. So they're thinking, well, why change? Why do we need to shift? We're doing what we need to do. We're getting them the information they need. Are we not achieving our goals? And to an extent, yes, you have achieved your goal by providing information. But on the other side, we're not meeting them where they are now. We're sending them PDF documents, 4, 5, 6, 7-page letters, which are summarized clinical studies. But is that really addressing their question? Maybe, but they want to know a quick answer, concise answer, something that's going to be a very quick response that they can use so that they can get to their end goal, which is making a treatment decision for the patient they have at their bedside or right in front. I feel that some companies have started going there more frequently and have been more proactive in it. Other companies are still hesitant to change. And I think there's many factors around that, such as personnel, individual hesitancy to change, the resource capacities required to be able to complete such endeavors, as well as ensuring that you have the right funding and the right from the organization to show that this is a valuable investment that you need to make so that you can move the deal forward.
Yeah. So I guess what I in broad strokes get a little bit from your answer to an extent is that maybe because of how long these functions exist, the focus is maybe a little bit too much on like what activities, like tactics, right? What do we need to do? We make SRLs when we put them in the medical booth, when we're at a conference, but maybe we have forgotten a little bit like the bigger picture, which is like doctors have questions and our job is to answer them as effectively as possible.
Correct. Yeah, I think the one thing that we try to keep at our center is our end goal is patients and patient care. That our intent is to inform the HCPs who can then educate their patients or treat their patients appropriately based upon what the most appropriate treatment option is. And what we're doing is we're giving them everything they're asking for, but we're not making it easy for them to adjust it. We're not making it easy for them to get the answer they're looking for sometimes to make that decision. So they start reading these long summaries and then they're like trying to get through it to get to, well, what do I need to know so I can make the decision? So I think that's where we need to move towards, so that we're giving the doctor that short little answer, the short little snippet that says, this is what you need to know so you can make the decision you need to. And it might be one sentence, one paragraph, a couple of bullet points, one small video, something that really gets to the point in a very easy and digestible way. But we need to consider that there's multiple different avenues that we need to reach a doctor. It's not just paper anymore. It's not just email anymore. Email obviously has become the forefront, but now we have different technology avenues. So we have different systems, different devices, different platforms that we want to make sure that we're also branching out to so that we can get them the information they need.
Yeah. So from what you're saying, I get this feeling that there is quite a bit of low-hanging fruit that can be addressed as well, right? If you say, well, maybe don't communicate the 6-pager with the answer at the end, for instance. What are some practical things that companies could do to improve upon what they have without necessarily radically needing to change everything yet?
Yeah, I think it's having the answer at the forefront. Like you said, like making sure the answer is in the very beginning to specifically the question they're asking. You could provide them with the additional details so that they can go and be like, I want the more research that's available for them. But this is the question that you asked, and this is the exact answer that you need. And making those little short snippets more easily digestible responses so that they can get the information that they need right away. At the same time, making it available on different platforms. I know we've gone from large computers to very small mobile devices, and being able to get it more frequently and more easily in mobile-friendly devices and mobile-friendly kind of formats so that they can then get the answer that they need. So those are small things, because I think a lot of individuals and companies can make those quick changes without having to do a large overhaul. And then at the same time, when you talk about congresses and booths, how do we make it so that the information we have there is quickly digestible, like having more visuals, having visual handouts or visual interactive presentations or slide decks, including videos. That maybe a short 20, 30-second video can always provide you with the same answer as a 2-page letter. These are things that can be practically completed more efficiently and more quickly than overhauling everything else.
Yeah. You mentioned budget before, and of course, I run a MedComms agency, so I know that it is obviously more budget intensive to create very visual and creative content, but I also know that as a result, there's a lot of opportunity to share resources across medical affairs more. And I was wondering about your view on that and how companies could potentially elevate their scientific response or standard response documents without breaking the bank.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a very good point, is because within medical affairs, there are many other functions that are already developing content that they're looking to utilize in their presentations or in their materials. So like scientific communications, the field medical teams, the medical directors, they're all looking to also utilize some of this content or create content that can be utilized in different platforms and different methods, through slide decks, through presentations, through interactive decks that we can leverage. And I think that it's important to have a close-knit relationship with all the individuals within these different departments. And the one thing that we run into is that each of our functions is very siloed. We have an understanding of what we need to do, and we look to accomplish it. And they have an understanding of what they need to do to accomplish it. But sometimes there's no crosstalk that allows us to understand, well, what are you doing that could really benefit us? And what am I doing that could benefit you? So that we can share some of the materials and then understand what's available and what can make what we're looking to achieve more practical, more easily achievable than duplicate efforts and request or require additional budget that may not be available.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that this is what you're practicing in your organization, right? This collaboration between medical affairs functions. Could you maybe unveil a little bit more about like how could a company, so let's say there's like a fictitious other pharma company, they're quite siloed, the SRDs are walls of text, and they're listening to this podcast. It's like, well, here, and tell me what we do from here. How do I create that collaboration in a productive way? How do we leverage some of those collaboration opportunities across functions and elevate our content? Where would I start?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that needs to happen first is getting buy-in. And that is achieved by working with usually the top down, so from leadership down, on having conversations around what the goals are for each of the different functions. And then as you have these conversations, you need continuous follow-up and continuous meetings to understand what's coming, what is going to be developed when that new material is available, what are timelines around that, what's entailed or involved with what the material is, and then how can we then leverage it across other different platforms of what we need to achieve. So it's a lot of ensuring that we're sharing the materials that we have. We are sharing what projects we're working on, and we're looking to ask the questions is, we're looking to create this asset. What do you have that could benefit us? And working with all the cross-functional partners. We need to step out of the norm. We need to just step out of just our comfort zone of working in our space. And for me too, I work in MedInfo. MedInfo is my bread and butter. I understand it. I know it, working on it on a regular basis, but I need to consider that there are others within my organization that can provide quite a bit of benefit and support to ensure that what I'm creating could be better. It could be more efficient and could be more visually appealing than what I currently have. Like you mentioned, text and a few figures and graphics, but those are things that we need to start with. And I'll have to say I'm in a smaller organization, so it's a little easier to have the conversations versus when I was at Janssen, which is much larger, where sometimes not as easy to have the conversation, but that's where the proactive nature needs to come in and you need to reach out. And I'm 100% sure no matter who reaches out to you, they're always willing to have a conversation and to be able to collaborate because they know that you're all working towards a common goal. And the best way to achieve it is as a team.
Yeah. So I guess to an extent, you're also saying like there may need to be a moment of being comfortable with accepting that, but what we have been doing for a long time was maybe not up to date anymore, right? And some changes needed.
Correct. Yeah. I think that we sometimes, if we don't step into the norm and we don't start moving forward with how we are enhancing our materials and preparing the information that we need to develop, we're going to be obsolete or we're going to be archaic. We're just going to be too far behind because technology is moving at this level and we're here. So they keep moving that much incrementally higher than we are, then there's no way we're going to catch up. So we need to try to stay in line with all the technological advancements and try to leverage some of those resources and systems and capabilities that are out there that we just haven't done yet.
Yeah. I was recently reading this book. It's called From Good to Great, and it is about companies. It's a very business-oriented book. Like, why do some companies just are good companies or maybe go under at a certain point? And why are some other companies becoming the giants of the world and are flourishing? And one of the things that I said is like companies that become great, they are very good at accepting the hard facts, right? Even when it isn't fun. And there's a lot of examples of those kind of companies that needed to look at themselves. And I think I know we're not talking about companies here. We're talking about MedInfo functions and departments and their teams, but it comes down to the same concept, right? Like once you embrace that idea, like, hey, listen, there's absolutely room for improvement. And the hard fact is that we're behind on how we're communicating to the rest of the world is the start of change.
Correct. And I think that's something that is easier said than done. I think a lot of people hear it, understand it, but don't have the drive or the vision or the proactive nature to move forward with it. So I think it's that last part of it that individuals need to have the drive and the vision of we need to move forward. And I feel like they also need to get not just buy-in from the cross-functional partners, it can be buy-in within their own teams. Because not only is the change impacting them, is impacting their team members or other partners that they work with. So if they outsource call center, or if they have outsourcing MedInfo, bring everybody together to say, we are transitioning how we manage our responses. We're transitioning how we are responding to inquiries, but we need to do this and this. Sometimes it's easier with larger companies. I can say we're part of a group called FactMI. We recently joined them, but I was part of them in one of my previous organizations. And it's a cross-functional collaboration of multiple medical information groups. I think about 37 or 38 companies now that work together to share best practices. We're not looking at each other as competitors. We're looking at each other as collaborators. And some companies have the bandwidth or have the capacity to make changes and show what's worked, what hasn't worked, where are areas for improvement, and then how can other companies leverage some of that information to make changes themselves. I think that's been a great initiative to help move the medical information space forward, to show that we all need to think of this holistically. And like you said, we're addressing questions around the world in a very archaic way. So we all need to consider these are new initiatives that we need to take to get there.
Yeah, I really like that. And I applaud that initiative of FactMI as well, because ultimately we need to set a new standard from what I hear, right? And for that, you need to collaborate. And I think it's great when we can do that in a kind of a non-competitive manner and focus on the greater goods for these areas in particular. I recently spoke with someone in the industry that I really respect, which will go unnamed for now, but is high up in a large pharma, like the top 5 organization. And she told me that she hired a new person to lead MedInfo, and she specifically chose someone who came from a completely different area. It was a bit uncanny, right? I hadn't seen it before. So I asked about it, and she was like, well, listen, I feel that will help us like thinking differently. And it's probably a bit radical, but it's probably going to shift the mindset and shift the team's mindset on what we could do. So I think it was actually an ex-agency person. And I think it's really interesting to think like that. So there's a lot of signals out there that this is actually moving, and I can't wait to see where this is going. Coming back again to the budget topic, like I was also wondering about like, what would you see as like a trade-off? So let's say we know from data that online platforms are underutilized. So a lot of companies are coming out with these platforms right now, which is great. I know it's an initiative that you're working on as well, but how does this play into the overall big picture of budgeting your tactics? Are there any upsides to doing this, or is it just an additional cost?
Yeah, I mean, we look for the upsides. I think we also look at the cost benefit of looking at these different initiatives, including a website. But we feel that as technology continues to evolve and grow, more and more content is moving into the digital space, and more individuals are going to the digital spaces to digest it and access it and make it available, and can look at it or get to it any time of the day that they want. And it allows for the information to be available when they want it at the time they need it. So they don't have to wait for somebody to get a response back to them. They don't have to wait to contact their MSL or their medical information colleague or their industry contact to get to the information. They can always get it available through a website. And I think that as companies continue to leverage the website platforms, and we continue to promote and advertise that we are building these different resources that are meant to be educational sources, we're hoping that these become more of the norm, and that more and more HCPs feel that, okay, I have a question, I'm on call overnight, I have a patient, it's 2 a.m., I'm probably not going to get in touch with anybody that I want to talk to. Let me see what's available on their website, and let me see what's available through their medical information or medical affairs website. And they can get it. They can look for the information, they can do a quick search and hopefully get the answer they're looking for and be like, wow, this was easy. It was simple, it was to the point. I didn't have to worry about going through some IVR phone tree. I got right to the answer I'm looking for on a web page. Required me to do 3-4 clicks and a couple of keyword entries. So we're hoping that's where the mindset is going to be shifting. We just need to make sure that whatever we create is simple, is easy for them to access, and allows them to be able to get to what they need with the minimal amount of effort. So those are the critical aspects of a website that you still need to consider, because once they get to that website and they've gone a little bit in and not getting where they need to go, they're going to drop, and they're going to go to other places like Google or other platforms and do searches, which we know that the information may be correct, but the information may also be incorrect, because there's a lot of random information out there. We want to make sure that what we're providing is scientifically accurate, is appropriate for the patient care, and companies, even though sometimes people feel that we're biased sharing our own information, medical is never looking to promote. We're looking to educate. So we're hoping that they understand that we're only doing this to provide them with the scientific data and the clinical information so that they can make a decision. And that's what we're here for. So hoping that we move in that direction and hoping that it continues to expand. But I think that's going to take some of our effort, our backing to get there. But I think that it's, in my experience, this is my 3rd time building a website. It's never been considered a budget impact. It's considered a budget necessary risk that we feel is going to eventually continue to evolve and to continue to expand and become much more accessed over time.
Yeah, so it's a long-term strategy that you expect to ultimately pay off in that regard.
Correct. Yeah, we hope for a shorter turnaround, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we understand that this is not something that's going to change overnight. We understand that it's going to take months. It's taken years now for the internet and for digital assets to become more and more prominent and more available, that we think that we just got to keep at it. And that's the thing that we need to continue to push forward. We need to continue to create assets for it. We need to continue to keep it up to date. We need to continue to make it something that they go to find something new. If they don't want to come back and see the same old, they want to say, oh, wow, the new data, there's new information, there's new Congress, and new products that are coming out to market. So this is meant to help them get that information.
Yeah. Well, I think that the proliferation of these kind of platforms is really going to help with that, right? Because I don't know, I'm just trying to find the first example that comes to mind. It would perhaps be the pipeline overview, right? Like everyone knows if you go to a website of pharma company, you can find a pipeline overview probably in 2 clicks. And I think with all these platforms being there, it hopefully becomes a standard as well and common knowledge among the target audiences. Like if I need MedInfo, I go to the website and find their medical affairs website or MedInfo website or whatever it's called, depending on the organization, which is all about like, how do people find that platform? So let's say you built a platform, you have fantastic content, all these best practices that we just discussed are implemented. Now, how can you make sure that the HCPs know that you actually have the platform, and how do they find it?
Yeah, I think this is where we need to be proactive. And I think we also need to be cognizant that a medical affairs website is not meant to be promotional. It's meant to be educational. And there's obviously guidelines and regulations in place to limit or separate promotion from education or scientific exchange. So what we still need to do is we need to think about ways and opportunities for us to be able to promote a website. So congresses, have it available at your medical affairs booth. Business cards, which link back to our website, or HCPs back to the website if they have questions that they are looking for or want more information about upcoming congresses or posters or abstracts, et cetera. They can always go to that resource to get it. And ensuring that everybody in the company is aligned on this is a resource for external HCPs to be able to get the information we're looking for, and then they can also all promote it. There's also other methods available, such as search engine optimization and ensuring that we appear higher up depending on what the right search terms are and the search keywords are. And then the other opportunity is working cross-functionally. So having commercial be able to leverage it when they get a question, drive them to the website at the same time as submitting a medical information request. So there are multiple different ways that we can share the website. Another one, and just going back to FactMI is also an opportunity for us to share the back to my website, but the website then links out to all the company sites because they show all the member companies, and each member company has a specific page, and that page can then link back to a company's medical affairs website. So using and leveraging other partnerships that you may have outside of just your organization is critical to ensure that there's opportunities to drive more and more traffic to your website, but informing individuals that you have a website. You have a resource available to them to be able to access it. So it's small steps, but trying to leverage every opportunity you can is going to be critical.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned or hinted towards compliance in your answer, and I was thinking that it might be a really great idea here if you could share some typical compliance considerations for a MedInfo site. What are the things that are sensitive and you need to be careful with, and how could someone maybe come up with a plan that is likely going to be easier to get through compliance?
Yeah, I think some of the compliance rules basically come down to, is it coming across as we are soliciting information? Because one of the biggest aspects of medical information, and it's even part of medical affairs, is we are there to provide answers to questions that are asked, and they're meant to be unsolicited requests. So there's no prompting, there's nobody bribing them to ask that specific question, and we're not prompting different answers to the questions they may not have asked. So a website could be deemed that way if it's developed inappropriately. So if they're asking a question and we're providing multiple different responses, half of which are not relevant to the question, it's just how the system generated the response. So it's determining the right method of search optimization within a website to ensure that you're giving them the exact response that they're looking for. And even from an HCP perspective, they want the answer. They don't want other information they didn't ask for. From a regulations FDA standpoint, they also don't want us giving out information that could be off-label or misleading or inappropriate based upon the question that's being asked. So some of the ways to overcome these is going back to our comment before where you're working cross-functionally or being proactive with cross-functional partners, doing the same with your regulatory and your compliance partners and your legal partners to ensure that they understand we're building a website. What are some of the guardrails we need to consider as we are building this out? And what are some of the areas that we need to keep in mind so that we do not come across as a solicited site, or we're not soliciting individuals to come to the site to get answers to questions that they're not asking. So as we have been building on our current website, one of the things that we're keeping in mind is working closely with our partners internally to determine what is their level of risk and what are they comfortable with us sharing through a website, through a search engine, through different pages so that we are remaining compliant.
Yeah. So basically, you need to be very targeted in your answers and not cast too wide of a net in your answers.
Correct. It's similar to what we do in MedInfo. Is we get a question, we provide a specific response, which could be customized or tailored to the question that's being asked. We don't usually delve out into other areas that are not relevant. And the same thing goes for a search engine. Sometimes when you're searching something, you want to make sure that you're getting the top hits that give you the answer. But we also don't so different from Google, where it gives you everything. We are limiting it to just the answer, and we don't want to go off too far at a tangent that could be inappropriate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing. Talking about these targeted responses, I was wondering, how do chatbots and AI potentially factor into this? I think we both know that ultimately this is going to play a role in MedInfo, and it could be extremely effective and efficient. But I'm just wondering, it would perhaps be hard to limit these responses or monitor these responses in a way that makes it fall within those compliance boundaries that you just outlined.
Yeah, and I feel that AI and chatbot or ChatGPT and some of the other platforms that are coming out are becoming more and more prominent. I feel that medical information hasn't really done a lot with them. I know with chatbot, some of the larger companies have utilized it and tried it due to the fact that there are certain rules and regulations through the unsolicited guidance by the FDA that we need to follow. It's become a little bit difficult to use the chatbot to address some of the questions just because some of the requirements that need to go along with the responses that you provide. Now, on the other side of things, with AI, I feel like AI is an opportunity for us to leverage the power of AI, where it can help to narrow down responses. It can help to summarize content. It can help to really look through your metrics and your insights to gather some of the key outputs from that, then utilize that to then tailor your responses better or update your responses to make sure that we're addressing the questions that are being asked. I feel like AI allows for some of the computer-driven development or natural language processing that we are doing more manually, and allows us to then create content that is chunkable. It can be more streamlined to different platforms, can allow us to narrow it down and tailor it for different areas and different ways of presenting it. So there's a lot that I think can come from AI. I feel that's just an area that we haven't tapped into as a medical information organization, at least not of now. So I think that's an area that really we need to learn more from, because I think there's still rules and regulations we still need to follow, even though we utilize AI, but we need to start considering it more and more frequently and more consistently.
Yeah, so basically rules and regulations need to catch up with modern technology, right? Over time.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Time is flying, Hiran. I think we're ready for our last question here for you. If you had a magic wand, what would you really like to change? So let's say you could change one thing within the general medical information function of pharma companies. What would it be?
I think the one big thing I would change is allowing everybody to get the information that they need when they want it, how they want it, no matter what they want. I think that's the one thing which is why we feel that we need to evolve as a medical information department or medical information group to achieve this, to get to the point where anybody can get what they need to, and we're integrated with different outside systems like EMRs, and we're not just within the company, and we're looking at the end goal, which is that patient care. So how we get there, I think that's going to be critical. But if I had a magic wand, everything would just be available everywhere, and anybody could have it whenever they need to. So we're not there yet, but I think that we are continuing to make strides towards it. And I think as we work together as a medical information organization outside of just our company, with all companies, I think we're all looking to achieve that goal. So hopefully we can work collaboratively, come up with best practices there, and think about ways that we can all work as a team to get there.
I like that. Very noble answer. Freedom of information, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Hiran, thanks so much. It was so great to have you here today. I really enjoyed talking with you about this topic, and I'm looking forward to everything that is going to happen. And I also wish you best of luck with all the innovation efforts that you're currently working on in your organization.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I think it was great to go through these topics, and looking forward to the future.
Thank you.
Transforming Medical Communications is brought to you by MedComms experts. To find out more about MedComms experts and how we create some of the most cutting-edge medical communications programs anywhere in the world, visit www.medcoms-experts.com. And then make sure to search for Transforming Medical Communications in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at MedComms Experts, thanks for listening.